Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Female Footballers Podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Female Footballers Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Female Footballers Podcast. My name is Cassie Gray. I'm your host, and I'm so excited today because we are joined by one of our mentors. She is an NWSL 2022 champion, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And she joined the Thorns, the Portland Thorns, back in 2021 for the Olympic national team. Sort of when they were out for the Olympics, she kind of joined. She came back over from the international play here to the NWSL. She's one of our trusted mentors. We love her dearly. Welcome, Taylor Porter.
Hi,
Hello.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be back. It's been a while, but yeah, excited to catch up again.
Yeah, so we've had you on our podcast before, which is why I didn't do like a long intro. But at the same time, for those newer listeners, you want to give them a little bit of insight into how you got to where you are now, as far as who you used to play for, and then the Thorns. Just give them that little quick background.
Yeah, so I played soccer at NC State, and then I graduated in 2019, and I was someone who actually didn't plan on playing soccer professionally, but once it came to my last game, I didn't want to give it up quite yet. So I thought, let's just give it a shot. And I had an opportunity to play at Orlando for the last World Cup as a World Cup replacement player. And that was a great experience. And then I went abroad and I played in Serbia for 5 months, where I got to play in Champions League, which was an amazing experience. And through those Champions League games, a Spanish team scouted me. So I was able to play in Spain for a year and a half, which was during COVID. So that was an interesting experience.
That's when we met you, right? We kind of met around that time.
Yeah. So I've been with you guys since 2020 or 2021. I can't remember exactly, but so 2021. And then during that summer, I came back, and the Thorns kind of opportunity came up randomly. And I was just a Olympic replacement player. And luckily I was able to stay since then. I was able to prove myself to stay longer, and I've been there since. So here we are.
You've been killing it there. Like, you've had a great, amazing, we've been watching you from afar. It's been so great to see, during that time, it was awesome. But then the last year has been so cool to watch you. So how has I guess you could lump in 2022. I know that last fall, so fall of 2022 was a rough time at the Thorns as far as everything that was going on behind the scenes in the world of the NWSL. I know you were there for some of that, but then this season you guys had a good season. So give us a little bit about your past 2 seasons with them.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been, I think, especially because when I was first came to the team, it was a different coach. And then I had a new coach in 2022, and then we have a new coach in 2023. So that's always an adjustment, having a different coach every year. But I think one thing was the group of girls have made it, luckily we've stayed the same kind of to its core. And I think that's what's been able to get through this time of coach transition. I think, having, especially because Mark was a coach for a long time, he was very successful. And then for Rian to come in, and she did an amazing job, and for us to come out as a championship team, I think was just really impressive on her part. And then also as a team as well, just working together to make that happen. I think that was a really, really, really fun year. It was my first time getting to a championship, because even to back in college, I've always made the tournament for NCAAs, but never got past the Sweet 16. And I know some other players in the league obviously have, and there are champions, but this was the first time I could actually experience that. So that was just really fun, and having my parents there. And it was actually coincidentally on my birthday. So it was kind of always one of those things where it was I remember literally in preseason, I was you guys, the championship is on my birthday this year. We have to make it. And so when it came down to it, I was okay, you guys, we got it. This is it. And so that'll always be something I'll always carry with me, a ring, and also it being on my birthday. So
yeah, that's got to be your high. That was going to be my next question, was the high-low cheer. So high being best experience of the last 2 years with the Thorns, the low kind of being the hardest, and cheer being the people around you. Who do you feel lifts you up the most? But your high, like what a high, like you're
Yeah.
basically first year and a half or year with them, you win a national championship. That's amazing on your birthday is just
Yeah.
like icing on the cake. That's so cool.
Yeah, definitely. And it was a great, and especially with like the league and like I think Ally was a sponsor able to like fly families out and like accommodate them. So it was really nice for like, since it happened so quickly and last minute, if you make the championship, some things happen so quickly behind the scenes for them to be able to come out was like really great. Without like to their expense. So it was
Yeah,
really
that's
great for
cool.
them to be there.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that they did that. That's really cool that they provide that. And they, I know this year there's been a lot of talk with it being a few weeks ago, the championship, um, the growth, even just from 2022 to 2023 with the championship weekend, kind of, were there a lot? I mean, you probably couldn't participate in a lot of the events as one of the teams in it, but did it feel pretty professional compared to what you had expected or?
Yeah, yeah. I definitely think there were, I mean, especially we have so many great sponsors around the championship. I know last year it was like Budweiser, this year it was Bud Light, and then there's also Just Women's Sports. So like so many things like sponsors help these championships happen. So this year we didn't make obviously the championship, but I do know that they had great like parties and like promotion around the championship to, you know, draw more attention and also I think like reward the players. So a lot of players were able to go to these, you know, celebrations. And I think that's amazing for them to like reward these players for such a really long season. Cause I mean, the season people are showing up to preseason in like end of January and then we're going until like November. So it's a really long year. So it's nice for people from other teams to come together and kind of celebrate and prepare to watch an amazing final. So that's also really great. I think there's definitely been a big jump between the 2 years with that. And hopefully the next year, it'll be even better and better. So
yeah, totally. So this past season, after coming kind of down from the high of winning, how was 2023? And like you said, it's a long season. So I mean, those of you playing college soccer listening, like that's nothing compared to the NWSL, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting with like college is like it is shorter, but I understand you play like 2 games a week, so it can be different. But even like we're playing 1 game a week, but it's like so many games and for so many months. So it's just like I think there's always like a high when you start the season, everybody's excited, and then there's definitely like middle of season, it's you see like fatigue starts to set in, and then it really so there's always like a lot of ups and downs throughout a season. I think that showed a lot with our team was just like our fatigue and kind of inconsistency with that. And I just think so it was, I think, a rough year with that, where it's like we've had amazing performances. And then there's been some where we just like fall flat. I think just with like, I think we've had a really rough year travel wise, and that took a big hit on us too. So I think that was hard as well. So it's just like, yeah, a lot of these things come into play that I don't think people realize, especially with like college now. I know a lot of teams charter. And we don't charter. And, you know, a lot of the teams don't. I know there are some that do, but like, so we're traveling, you know, coach, we're at the airports, we're traveling. Sometimes we're on like 10-day trips because we have to go to Orlando and then we're going to Chicago and we're in a hotel for a really long time. And, you know, so it's things like that. And sometimes training conditions aren't the same or great. So it's like, so many factors come into that. So I think that was, hard for us this year was the travel. This was probably the hardest year travel wise for us. We've had a lot of long trips. And yeah, just with like the fatigue of a long season. And then there was Challenge Cup and World Cup in the middle of the year. So I think a lot of things came our way, but we're always a team that we're like, you know, we always go head on. We're facing adversity. So, I think the effort was there for us. And unfortunately, we just kind of fell short for both the Shield and for the championship. I think we deserved at least one of them. And it's unfortunate that we weren't able to get one of those wins for us.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have an amazing team. I was bummed to see that as well. But like you said, it is grueling. It's a grueling schedule, grueling travel. And you know, I do think though that, so would you say that's kind of the low is just like the travel and the moments of fatigue? And I do think that's very mental, right? You know, female footballers were focused on mental skills training. That's a huge piece of this, right?
Yeah. And I think this year more than anything has taught me how important it is to have like your team culture to be very strong. And that's something that like on every team I've ever been on, we really hone on like really wanting to have a strong team culture, because when things are not going well, or like when you're on those long travel trips and you're being with a roommate for 11 days, you're eating every meal together, you're hanging, it is hard being with your team 24/7 for those long trips sometimes. It's just like, and you're tired, you're fatigued, you're away from family, so I get it can be very stressful for some people. So I think focusing on what you need as a player to be successful individually, but also like as a team, like finding a way to come together meaningfully and like having a strong team culture is really important in those times where things don't go very well.
Yeah, and I mean, you have some like names on your team that are, I mean, Christine Sinclair has been around. I played against her. That's, I mean, I'm close in age to her, and Becky Sauerbrunn and Crystal Dunn. You have some girls that were in and out probably a lot too with the World Cup, and so that's also going to be really hard with those types of players coming in and out for a month at a time with the World Cup, right? So, and then injury, obviously, like I know injury plays a huge role in such a long season.
Yeah.
But does that add to team culture issues at all?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's hard. I mean, it's like anything, if you're in and out a lot, it's hard to stay connected. But I think everyone tries to do the best of their bandwidth to do that. Like, I think everybody's very individual with that, but I know it's real. And especially like, we're always rooting for them from afar. Like when they're in the World Cup, we were having our, little watch parties together, watching their games, like all rooting for them, even like getting up early or late, staying up late to watch like Japan for Hina and things like that. So we always try and come together the best way we can to support them, because I know it's very hard on them as well. Just I can't even imagine with the travel they have to do and going in and out, and they don't have as much rest as we do. And so yeah, it definitely is just like figuring out what people need individually, because everybody's different. And so but I know by the end of the season, it's really hard, especially for them. It's just like so much travel and fatigue and having to show up and perform every day. So it's just, but it's definitely individual. Like, what do you need individually? I think that's kind of like what comes down to it, and having those conversations to be like, what do you need from me to like to support you, and vice versa.
Who are the players on your team that you feel most supported by? That would be like your cheer. Who are the people that you hang out with, who you, it's kind of easy, that add to that positive team culture?
Yeah, I think we have a good balance of like, you have high minute players that are like supportive and like have kind of like that natural leader role. And then you also have people who maybe aren't as high minutes that also carry such a good aspect of team culture. So like, the people that I hang out with the most, I'm really good friends with Tegan McGrady. And she played, she's also a champion from Washington, and then she played at San Diego and is here. So she's become one of my really good friends. And then Hannah Betfur, she's definitely like the goofball of the team. I think she's like the person that like will, no matter what day it is, she'll crack a joke, and like everybody, she just lightens the mood. And so, and then one of my first friends I met on the team, or like made, I would say, is Natalia Kuika. She's Finnish. She actually, I think she just won the best Finnish player this year. Awesome. So she's an amazing player, so underrated and underappreciated. And so I love her so much, because she's quiet too. So I think people kind of forget about her sometimes, but she's an amazing human being. So I would say those are like my closest friends with the team. And then just like, but everybody brings their little thing that makes the team better. Yeah, I mean, just like I think Becky Sauerbrunn, she's just kind of like that. I don't want to say quiet, but just more like silent leader of like just through example, and just kind of like her presence of like calm, composed, and just like leads the team through just kind of like, just her composure and just her experience.
Was she still able to do that with her injury this summer?
I know. Yeah, I know that was like a really frustrating injury. But I think she was able to take on a different role, I guess, still trying to lead in her own way, but maybe from, instead of being on the field. And so, I definitely think that didn't change much between like her always being someone where you can go to for advice. She's kind of like that person where it's just like, I really need just like someone to talk to. And so I think everybody has their own little aspect that they add to this team, where you can be like, okay, this is what I'm needing, I can go to this person, or anything like that.
I love that. I love that the individual sides of everyone kind of come out and support each other. And you have, I feel like, a whole other life outside of soccer and hobby that hopefully our followers already know about because they follow you too. But you're an avid reader, and I
Yeah.
love following how much you read. And I would assume that there's got to be some other players that share in your affinity for reading. Is there anybody on the team that you go to
Yeah.
bookstores with, or you're in a book club? I don't know. Any of that?
Yeah. No, definitely. And it's funny, I picked up reading last like April, and it was Verity by Colleen Hoover, where I was like, I feel like I want to start reading. And I read that and I was hooked. I literally, after reading that book, I bought a Kindle and everything just kind of, and then I just started reading nonstop. And it's funny because I would say Sophia Smith, she was like the first person on the team who kind of like was like, well, actually not true. Becky and Kling read a lot, but like Soph was just someone who was like reading in the locker room sometimes and things like that, where I was like, damn, I wish I was like that. And then so I was talking to her more, and she was the one who was like reading Colleen Hoover and stuff like that. So that's when I kind of got into it. And so now I feel like a lot more people are starting to read, and I was so happy about it because I was like able to get Soph into fantasy because she was kind of hesitant about getting into fantasy. And I was like, just try this. And then she loved it. Same with like Kelly Hovley. Olivia, I'm going to take credit on taking Olivia under my wing for reading because she was trying to get into reading and she was asking what to read. And I gave her some recs. And so she read all Sarah J. Maas. She was like all about ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, and all those books. And she was texting me. She was like, oh my God, Taylor, I can't believe this is happening. And we would have phone calls when we finished books. Like that just happened with like this new book that came out 2 weeks ago. She called me the second I finished, and we're like, oh my God. Like, so and we still are texting like throughout this break, just being like, did you read this? This is what happened. What are you reading? So it's been great to see her kind of like get into that. So yeah, I definitely feel, and then a lot of other girls have started to like, okay, let me dabble in this, let me dabble in that. Cause I'm like, we have a lot of free time. So, and especially being in Portland, it rains a lot. So sometimes we don't want to be out and about, but if you want to go to a coffee shop or things like that and just have a little book and read with you. So that's been a really fun thing too.
That is so fun.
Yeah.
So to back up a little bit, I love that our first time meeting, or no, I'm sorry, first time we started our podcast, we had a whole conversation about Olivia Moultrie because she had just joined the league. And I love that you had even chimed in on like how we all felt about it. And we all were like in her corner, supporting her, but also like, well, this is the first time this has happened, blah, blah, blah. And I love that you're now like taking her under your wing and helping her become more of a reader. And I love that this whole book club vibe of your team has to help that culture, right? It's something you can talk about outside of the sport. It brings everybody together in a certain way. Is there anyone that likes other types of book? Like, does everybody like? I know you're a huge fantasy reader, but is anybody outside of fantasy like more nonfiction, more?
No, definitely. I would say from just my knowledge, I don't know. I know Kling is a big like nonfiction reader. I mean, she loves fantasy. She's all about fantasy, but she's also someone who like I know she has like a fantasy book she's reading, and then maybe like some sort of nonfiction book she's reading at the same time or something like that. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely people that like to read nonfiction. I think, especially, I think sometimes for at least us, maybe not as much. A lot of us have really liked the fiction side of it, of just like maybe finding more of like an escape, a nice little fun escape, rather than like always self-improvement. Because it's like, okay, yeah, that's nice to be able to like want to do that, but I think it's more of actually like a leisure thing than always being like, okay, I'm going to try and like self-improve all the time.
That's actually exactly what I was hoping your answer was going to be, because I think that that's pinpointing an area that we see at female footballers where girls are being pushed to self-improve on every aspect of their game at all times. And I think we're always pushing self-care. And for some people, they think that's sitting in a bathtub with cucumbers in your eyes. And that's not what we're saying. We're saying find other hobbies that you're interested in that are kind of an emotional and mental release and escape from the game a little bit. Because oftentimes leaving it aside for a second and not always self-improving every 5 seconds can actually help your game in general. Like for your team, it's showing that you can connect on other things outside of soccer that's only going to help you on the field and in the locker room and all those moments, right? So I love that. I actually love that you guys choose fiction. And I think like anyone listening who's a player, hopefully you take that away from this conversation is you do need things outside of the game that aren't always about self-improvement, and
Yeah.
that it actually in turn will probably still improve your
Yeah.
game and your mentality.
Yeah. No, I think that's like something a lot of us are still learning, and I think eventually learn, at least, is that like soccer's always been kind of our whole life. And I think coming into this professional world, I've learned that like it can't be my whole life though, because there are times where soccer isn't going well and it dictated too much how I felt about myself in my life, to where I was like, I need to start finding other ways to fill my cup, because at the end of the day, I am more than an athlete. I'm more than a soccer player. This is just my job and what I do, but it's not every aspect of me. So now I feel a lot better being like, yeah, I'm an avid book reader. I've gotten into like painting and I love to paint. I'm horrible at pottery, but I don't mind doing it. Or just like, I like to go on, so I think it's just like nice being able to be like, no, like, yeah, this is my job. I play soccer. I train in the morning and I have games on the weekend. It's just kind of like this, something I do. But these other aspects of me that I'm starting to figure out more about, like myself, being like, oh, I really like doing this. I don't feel guilty if like on my day off I'm spending 6 hours diving into a book on my couch all cozy with like a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, or with my friends and painting. We've done really fun like little goofy painting sessions, or a sip and paint and things like that. So I think it's been fun being able to experience that with some of my teammates and myself, to learn more of myself outside of my sport.
Oh, I love that. That's like such an important message for younger players to understand and to learn from. Which also leads me into like your off season. So now you're in off season. Like, what does an NWSL player do in their off
Mm-hmm.
season? And like you said, you had time throughout season because there's a lot of downtime through
Mm-hmm.
travel and stuff like that. So reading is a great avenue. But now that you have full days, what does that look like for you? What is a typical day or week? Or I know you have about a month and a half, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So it's important to take time off. And so that's something that like I make sure I don't touch a ball. I'm like, no, I'm letting, because you've been going for 11 months, like you need your body to rest. But it's also finding other ways, like maybe some like yoga or things like that, where it's like you can still move your body, go on walks. And so it's nice going on walks with like my dad or my mom, like downtown by the water, and just, finding different ways to exercise without having it to be so high intensity. I think what's really important for me during the off season is spending time with family, because during the season we're very limited with that. We don't have a lot of time off to be able to see family as much as we would like to. So I try and just spend as much time as I can with my immediate family and extended family. And one thing is also, I really like trying to learn new things in the off season. So last year I did an internship with Budweiser and was able to learn more about sports marketing. And then I'm working on possibly doing another internship, still kind of revolving around sport, but just trying to figure out new things about, eventually, once I'm done with soccer, what do I want to do? So it's fun being able to learn something new, to also kind of fill my day a little bit. And yeah, so it's just kind of like still doing my hobbies, spending time with family, and learning something new.
I think that's so smart. I think, my husband played in MLS for 8 years, and I think a lot of professional athletes are so deep in the sport that they don't always think about what's next and what comes after. And as soccer players, we're limited to a time frame that we can only play for so long. And so to get experience in these moments and to
Mm-hmm.
learn about yourself and what you're interested in, and something to put on a resume so that when you're done someday, you have an idea. Because I think that transition can be really hard for some people. The deeper that a player identifies as a soccer player and their whole identity is wrapped around that, it's almost a harder transition after it's gone.
Yeah.
And so the more, I just love to hear how balanced you sound with not just hobbies, but interests, and just knowing that your body needs rest, taking time off. I think that's a message nobody ever hears. And they're often listening to coaches who haven't experienced the game at your level. So to hear from
Mm-hmm.
somebody at your level that that's important is a really big message. So I hope that people are taking that away from it. So what's the plan, next year? Like, what are your goals for your next season? What are you hoping for?
Yeah.
How do you train and get started for another season?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely in my like taking time off phase. I am like working out very lightly, kind of starting to get back into it a little bit. But it's just it is one of those hard times of years where sometimes you're like preparing for the unknown. I am a restricted free agent this year, and my contract is at the end of its term. So it's like I could be with Portland, I could be with another team. And a lot of those things don't get decided until later on. It's always the off season's always crazy behind the scenes in the NWSL. So many things are happening that people don't see or know about. And so
can you explain what a restricted free agent is for people who might not know what that is?
So after a certain amount of years, you can be a restricted free agent or a free agent. So restricted means that I'm just going to use my situation as an example so I'm with Portland, I'm a restricted free agent. So let's say another team wanted me, they can offer me a contract, and Portland can either give me a higher contract or I can go with that other team, because it's all about players' rights. And so you have up to two. So two teams or two offers can be made to the player, and the team that has my rights, which would be Portland, has to up the contract or let me go. And then for free agents, they're free to go wherever they want. It doesn't matter what team they have. So we have a lot of free agents on our team right now. And so they have the right to receive any offers from everybody and go wherever they want. And it doesn't really matter about what the team that has their rights currently. So that's what makes this year, especially because I think this is our second year with free agency ever since our CBA. So last year was definitely like our first time experiencing it, but this year there's even more free agents, and there's big name free agents, like just on my team, like there's Becky Sauerbrunn, Kling, Crystal, like all these big names and in the league. And like, I think Rose LaBelle is one. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that actually goes this year, because there are some big names. So that goes into play. There's free agency, restricted free agency. There's normal trades. We have expansion teams. So it's definitely, we have teams without coaches. We have, new ownership. So it's just a lot of things go behind the scenes that I don't think people realize. There's a lot of talks with agents, with clubs, with GMs. And so it can be a very stressful time of year for people.
Totally.
And I think it's out of your control. I think that's what I try and tell myself and others. Like I've done what I had to do to play. And it's kind of like, I'm a firm believer of things happen for a reason. And so it's in the universe right now. So it's just kind of like letting things play. And if that means a player stays with where they're at or move on, like that's just kind of, we'll see what happens. So it's just kind of staying present and not focusing too much on the future, because you just don't know what's going to happen yet.
That's such a great outlook. And I think that is the hardest part. And I think people don't realize that a trade or a free agency or any of these types of things it's life altering. And I think that's why it holds a lot of stress, and people from the outside who are just watching all this happen, they don't realize what that means. And for some of these players, they have children, they have families, they have to sell homes. I was in that boat every time my husband got traded. He's gone the next day, and I'm left to pack up the house and do all those things. And I think that there's a lot of stress. And so to have the mindset of it's out of my control, I need to stay in the present moment and control what I can control and just focus on right now is such a healthy place to be, and so needed, because it's a lot of wasted energy if we're focused on the what ifs, right? And I think as soccer players, we're always focused on what's next, like we're programmed to know what's next, or to try to have a piece of control over what's next, and we just can't a lot of the time. And this reminds me, this off seasons in the pro level, if I could equate it to anything, it kind of reminds me of like junior and senior year high school for girls who are trying to get recruited. I mean, if you're listening and you're trying to get recruited, it's that feeling, but it's like 3 months of it as the most intense feeling, right? Of just like not knowing where you're going to be. And even, I think that NWSL and MLS now are much better once you're in a place of just uprooting. It used to be much scarier. You could be uprooted anytime, right? But these moments, it does probably bring you back to those feelings of like the recruiting trips and talking to coaches. And it's just the unknown. That feeling just is unsettling, right? But so I think having all these hobbies and these things that you do in the off season are really there to provide that present moment feeling and that ability to like disassociate from all the noise that's around you. And being home, I'm sure helps too, right? You're home in San Diego now.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like, I think having the support system I have and knowing that, and it's just all about perspective. And even from being a young player, like you said, being recruited for college, I was on one of the best teams in the country. I had every single player on my team played Division 1. We had players that went to big teams. And I was actually, I think, like the second to last players to commit to a college. I was one of the last ones to do it. And so I know that was very stressful for me, but like, and I had these other schools that were interested. And then one last minute fell into my lap, and that was NC State. And to know that like if I was maybe letting anxiety take over and maybe commit to a team that was like, okay, yeah, I'll go here, but maybe wasn't the best fit. And something actually came better in the end. And I think having that patience and trust in kind of the process and allowed me to go to an amazing team, an amazing program, get my degree. And that essentially led me to where I am now, which is being able to play professionally. So I think it's just having kind of the patience and the trust in that things will happen the way it's supposed to. And I think carrying that into now, because I used to I would be an anxious mess and let it cripple me in the off season. And I think taking a step back where it's like, oh my God, like I literally, whether I stress over this is not going to change the result. And so being able to kind of take a step back, be present, be like, I'm going to control what I can control, which is taking care of my body and taking care of my mental health through what I need to do. And at the end of the day, I was like, what is the worst case scenario? I'm teamless, but I have a home, I have a family, I have a savings account. I can get it's just kind of like taking things into perspective of like, it seemed like such the end of the world or like a failure that like if a team didn't pick me up, but like knowing I was like, honestly, like, okay, like it's okay. Like, am I going to look back on this in 20 years and be like, yeah, that was such a defining moment of I was such a failure. It's like, no, I literally didn't get picked up or whatever. Something didn't happen the way I wanted to. But it happened for a reason. And I'm like definitely a firm believer of that, of like I'm all about timing. And so, yeah, I think it's just, I've learned, and this is, I would say the first off season or maybe second off season, I would say last season, I put it into practice, but this year I feel like I've really like taking note on the mental side of just letting things be. Things will happen the way it's supposed to happen. And I'm going to control what I can control. And that's taking care of my body, taking care of my mental health and being with family. And that's what I know I won't regret, taking care of myself at the end of the day, than killing myself with anxiety and overworking my body and then it not working out for me or whatever. I think I'll never regret being with my family or taking care of myself at the end of the day.
Oh, this is such a refreshing outlook and conversation. I hope that so many of the players listening understand that this is so important, that balance, the hobbies, the interests, the really diving into time with yourself and a break from the sport can really benefit. And that, the more that you dive into those self-care routines and things that bring you joy, the more you're going to not, worry so much about where you end up. And I agree with you. I think that, there's always the silver lining in every situation. And I think you're going to end up in an amazing place. And I can't wait to hear about where, and we'll have to have you on again in a few months just to see where you do end up and how it's going and all that. I think it'd be really cool. And thank you so much for like talking to us. It's been a while and I love getting to like update on how you're doing, especially this past year and a half. And for those listening, I hope that you guys took some great points from this conversation, because I think that Taylor always has some awesome insight, which is why we love having her as a mentor. Any last thoughts, anything that you want to share?
No, I thank you for having me on here again. I know it's been a while since the last conversation, but I just hope that people use the resources that they have, like female footballers, to be able to work on the mental side starting at a young age and just getting that proper perspective and lessons to learn now that'll help you not just as an athlete, but like as a person later on. So thanks for having me on here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. We love having you. You guys definitely check out Taylor on Instagram. She always shares some awesome books that she's reading. You can follow for some really good fantasy books if you're interested, if that's your genre. And thank you so much. We look forward to talking to you again soon. Those of you listening, we do have a winter mentorship program that starts January 15th to February 25th, 6 weeks, virtual one-on-one mentorship with a pro or college athlete at certain levels, either former or current. You get to Zoom one-on-one each week and work on these types of skills and have these types of conversations that we had with Taylor today. So we really, really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much. And we will hopefully get to catch up soon.
Yeah, thanks.